Hi there, folks. If you're enjoying Not Suitable for Work, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. It does make a difference and helps others find the podcast. Thanks. Welcome to Not Suitable for Work. I'm your host, Peter C. Diamond. You think your office is nuts? Wait until you hear some of these stories.
It's a story I tell people as a cautionary tale of what not to do in a pressure-filled situation.
The first thing that goes through my mind is I'm going to stand in front of a room full of people with nothing between me and them except for very nice, freshly ironed pants.
He said, there's two guys in town. One guy isn't as good, but he'll show up on time. The other guy is a pothead. Then we make some calls.
With each podcast, I interview people who have a humorous work story to share. Along the way, I'll offer advice to help you make sense of your own office nonsense. Don't worry, no careers were harmed in making Not Suitable for Work. Names and places may have been changed to protect the not so innocent. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road. What are the chances that a guy's guy from West Lafayette, Indiana, with no background in women's fashion, would find himself scouring the Los Angeles garment district in search of the perfect little black dress? Well, my friends, not so far-fetched. Careers take unexpected turns, and that's exactly what happened to Tony Dowell, a patent attorney from West Lafayette, Indiana.
The beginning of the story was my wife wanted to buy this women's clothing store, and she was a prolific shopper, very stylish, and shopped at this store in West Lafayette quite often, and the owner was selling it, and she got it in her head that she was going to buy it. All my kids were in school at that point. She was looking for something to do, looking for whether taking a job. She was volunteering everywhere already, and brought the numbers to me and the sale price and said she was going to buy this women's clothing store.
And this is where, as a coach, we would say, if you match your passion with your career.
And she was absolutely wanting to do that.
So as a prolific shopper, it's let's put these two things together.
Correct.
All right.
And she knew fashion. So this store, we reached an agreement with the owner, who had purchased the store when her daughter was at Purdue. I ran the numbers. Trish could work there, make a little money, lose a little money. It didn't really matter. It was something that she had a passion about and was going to pursue. Unfortunately, the story takes a sad turn here. Trish was diagnosed with colon cancer 3 weeks after we bought the store. And not long after, couldn't work in the store. So we had to hire a manager, and Trish died 10 months after we purchased the store.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. I have three daughters, all college and high school age, and they worked in the store, and we also had a manager. And after Trish died, we continued running the store. In fact, when Trish was sick, we had an opportunity to move the store to closer to campus and get a place right on the main thoroughfare at Purdue, and we took that opportunity, moved it up to State Street at Purdue.
And at this point, are you thinking, okay, so you're now more engaged in the store, right?
Yes.
So you're and you're still having your patent lawyer business?
Well, I'm trying to keep that going as well.
You're trying to keep that going. So you've got this store, and you moved it closer to campus thinking that would more be your target audience?
Yes.
Would be more college students?
We thought that there would be
maybe a little bit younger.
More business, 20,000 young women on campus. Being closer to them, thought that would help, increase business. It was an increased cost because we had to remodel the new store. We had to get more inventory. We had to pour more into it. But it seemed like a good idea at the time to expand operations.
And your daughters were encouraging Dad.
Oh, all in
to do this.
Yeah, they were all in.
Okay,
and they loved having the store and working there. That also involved. I had a guy that worked for me, Skip, who just gutted the store, did all the work on the inside, the fixtures, the walls, poured a cement counter, and just really made it look. It's kind of an Urban Outfitter or Free People type look.
Yeah, I was going to say,
store.
like, who's designing? Like, who was kind of who had the design inspiration? Where did that?
Well,
is this coming from the patent lawyer? Or
even me,
even the patent lawyer. Okay,
I was going with my daughters to, for example, Aeropostale, Free People, and I'm a woodworker from way back, so this was an opportunity for me to, make ways to hang dresses and things to put clothes on. That was very fun. I mean, I enjoyed that aspect of it, and both Skip and I.
Okay, and I mean. So, like, would you have ever thought, like 2 years prior to this, that you would ever be in this position doing this?
Absolutely not. No, no idea whatsoever.
And there you are thinking about. I love the fact that you're woodworking and trying to figure out how to hang dresses in this new store.
Exactly.
Kind of creating this. And so the vibe was kind of like somewhat of an Urban Outfitter. Cool, college age woman store place
Exactly.
for her to go. And now the ad guy in me wants to know, like, was there any other competition? Like, who else were you maybe up against?
That's interesting because there really wasn't any competition in Lafayette. I mean, there is a mall there. And it would have the normal young women's stores. But for high-end women's clothing, people in Lafayette would typically go to Indianapolis, an hour away, or Chicago, 2 hours away. So I think women were not accustomed to shopping in Lafayette for high-end women's clothing. And when Trish was still there, when Trish was alive, a lot of her friends would come in. And, of course, they were as prolific shoppers as she was, and that led to a lot of business. But without Trish in the picture, there was less of that traffic.
Okay. So is this also when you're beginning to shift does it become less high-end and more...
Well, that's
okay. Let's go. All right.
Well, that was
Peter,
my gripe.
Let the man finish the story.
Well, that was much to my daughter's disappointment. I was starting to have some input on what we would buy. They wanted to keep it totally high end, $120, nice dresses. And my thought was, you need to kind of slut it up, for the college girls. Have shorter dresses and party stuff. And I had a lawsuit in L.A. at the time, which is a major supplier for clothing, retail clothing. And so I was visiting this garment district and buying clothes myself, me. After court in the morning, I'd go and pick out little black dresses and, stuff that I thought would sell.
And so how long ago was this?
This
roughly?
was 5 years ago.
5 years ago. So now, were you like taking pictures and like sending them back, or were you just doing this all on your own?
I was sending it back. We also had a manager at the time, and I would get her approval on all of the things I would attempt to pick out. And then we also had the idea, once we were in the new location, which was much larger, to get into other areas. We got into shoes, we got into makeup, we got into accessories. And you would think if you buy a pair of sunglasses for $2 and sell them for $12, I mean, there's no way not to make money at that, right?
Exactly.
You would think.
It
didn't seem to work that way. And I had left it to our manager and my daughters for a long time, but for some reason we didn't make money. And every few months we would need more money because it was Mom's Day coming up at Purdue, and we needed to expand the inventory. We were going to expand into shoes or something else. And rather than this business writing me checks, I was writing checks to the business.
So, like, how are you? I guess, how are you kind of grappling with this? Did you begin to get a real interest in the store, and like you were talking about, like shopping for stuff? So when it came to making these decisions on things, how did that work? How was that working for you?
I did not want to do it. I avoided it if at all possible. After the kind of the fun side of it, the woodworking and the building the wall with the barn siding and things like that, when that was done, I tried to stay out of it. But as I repeatedly was needed to write a check to the business, it became inevitable that I participate. I brought Skip in. Like I said, Skip worked for me. He's a woodworker by trade, but also a very responsible individual. We had another business selling dirt, which is not successful either, but that's another story. I brought Skip in to look at the books, keep an eye on things. For example, the electricity bill hadn't been paid, the Indiana tax bill hadn't been paid, and I brought Skip in to just keep track of that, which. Skip is less of a women's clothing guy than me.
So then what was beginning to unfold here? So Skip is there, you have a manager, your daughters, like now, and financially it's not working quite as you had anticipated it would. So now what's beginning to
I guess
go
that's
through your head?
And that's to answer your last question. That's when I said I've got to get involved. I don't have a choice here, and some of it was to kind of preserve my wife's legacy. When she died, as far as she knew, the store was a success. It was great. It was beautiful. And then as it was going downhill, I had to step in and get involved. So. That's when I started looking at the books and trying to figure out, where are we going wrong? Some of the areas where my daughters were kind of treating the store as their own closet. If they wanted clothes, they took them, and I knew that. It's not like they were stealing it. The way I figured, it was cheaper than them driving to Nordstrom in Indianapolis and buying clothes to just have our own. But what it did was when we would get new stuff in, they would have the first pick. And everything left would not be the right size or the top of the line. And our employees were using their employee discount and getting some of the best clothes. So that was some of it. Otherwise I don't know where we went wrong. Our rent was very expensive. But I could not figure out how to make money at this. And I think there's a tendency, if you make money in one area, that you must be smart and you can make money in another, and I don't think that's the case. This is especially a small store in a town like that. It's very relationship driven. You need to have the foot traffic of seeing the owner for a small private. No one was coming to the store to see me and buy clothes. That's for sure. So it just was not working.
So what did you do to try and market this? Like, what was your marketing strategy?
Well, we first tried to direct information to the students on campus, marketed to the sororities. We had events for some of the girls' programs and things on campus. And then I had the bright idea to produce and air a commercial. I tried to get this local owner feel into it by starring in the commercial myself. So the commercial starts off with me in the store in a suit saying, "Hello, this is Tony Dowell, and I own the women's clothing store Colette." Long story. And then I hold up a couple pieces of clothing to the camera and ask, "Would your wife like this?" Completely directing it to the guys out there. And I said, "Would your wife like this?" I don't know. You don't know. And then I said, "That's why you need the Colette gift card." We ran this on Monday Night Football and a couple guy shows that were recommended on the local TV channels. And this is the type of commercial that ran right after the local car salesman commercial.
Got it. Yeah.
And trying to direct it to the guys. Are you looking for a gift for your wife? My name is Tony Dowell, and I own the women's clothing store Colette. Long story. But if you need a gift, we can help. Would your wife like this? Maybe. How about this? You don't know. Let's face it, we're guys. We don't have a clue. But here's the answer, the Colette gift card. Because it's not just about the clothes, it's about the entire shopping experience. You can order the Colette gift card online, a couple of clicks, your shopping's done, and you can get back to the game. The Colette gift card, it never disappoints. The commercial costs like $5,000 to produce and run a few times. We sold a grand total of 8 gift cards from that.
And who scripted this? Was this a
it was me.
Was this
Yeah.
a Tony special? This was just kind of like, hey, I have this idea. I mean, I would get a gift card for my wife. This is what my experience would be.
Well, I would. That would solve my whole shopping problem. I wouldn't have to go look around. I just go into Colette, buy the gift card, give it to my wife. I'm done.
Yeah, exactly.
And in fact, that's a line from the commercial. You can get back to the game. And I don't know. I guess other guys didn't feel the same way. And I read somewhere that a lot of gift cards don't actually get cashed in.
That's right.
People forget that.
That is true. I forgot what the number is, but there is massive amounts of money that gets left on the table.
Right.
But
hoping to benefit from
that. Were your daughters just like, oh, Dad, come on?
To make it up for them, and maybe this is a branding problem. We had another commercial with my third daughter starred in, jumping through a field and leaning up against a barn and doing this kind of high-end, fashionable thing, in clothes from Colette. And then, contrast that with me on Monday Night Football saying, hey, come get a gift card for your wife.
Classic. It's the advertising guy in me again is maybe kind of like doing some internal somersaults, but again, I give you a lot of credit for just trying stuff and doing it and trying to make it work. So
we tried until we couldn't afford to try any longer.
Okay. So then what began to happen? Because I know you talked a little bit about do we go into other categories? So whether it was like accessories or shoes or makeup, and so how would you kind of as a patent attorney, and also like how would you begin to evaluate whether those were even viable categories to begin to include in the store? Like, were you and Skip sit there in the back room and be like, what do we got here?
More or less. Yeah. There's no objective way to determine, what might make it work. And I wasn't there all the time. I wasn't there seeing what people were interested in, seeing what they were buying. So when I'm in LA and I buy $5,000 worth of makeup to create a new display, I have no clue whether that's going to work. None whatsoever. Completely shooting in the dark. But that's what I did. And I don't have a women's clothing store anymore.
So how long did the store go on for?
We kept it going for 2 years after Trish died. There came a point. There was always a goal. We were always going to keep it going till, and put another 10 or 15 grand in until when the kids got back to school, when the girls got back to Purdue, or it was going to be the next home football game, homecoming. Maybe that would drive sales, or Mom's Weekend in the spring. And it was about 2 years after Trish died. We made it to Mom's Day, which was a big shopping day at Purdue. And after that, it was like, no, I can't do it anymore. I was tapped out. And the worst part wasn't even the money that I was pouring into this. It was that my focus was diverted to little black dresses rather than finding companies to sue for patent infringement.
From this, I'm curious about some of the lessons you learned, whether it's about family businesses or even getting involved in something that may not be your area of expertise. Like, I'm just curious, like, from this, what did you learn from this experience?
The first is don't get colon cancer. I think if Trish had been in there running it and with her friends coming in, we'd have been fine.
So kind of having that person that really is kind of the beacon to.
Yes.
And I guess she also probably had the vision, right, for what it would be. So I think that is another important aspect of starting a business or having a business. Like, what is that vision? Who has that vision? And who's really going to marshal it and carry it forward, and kind of be that torch bearer, because you need that, right? So it sounds like there really also wasn't that person that really had that vision of what this would look like.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Without that leader, it just wasn't there. And as my daughters loved the store, but they were going in different directions. They were going off to college. Even my daughter, who was at Purdue, joined a sorority and was focused on that, not the store. So absolutely, that is a great lesson to take from it.
And the manager probably was a very competent manager, but also maybe didn't have kind of that driving ambition and vision for what the store would be.
And the manager was, she was a young woman, recent Purdue grad, who was great at merchandising and the look of the store, but had no concept at all for the finances.
Got it. So I guess that gets to point number 2, which is managing finances for a small business. Anything that you learned from that experience, especially given that it wasn't in your wheelhouse either, as far as I'm sure if it was setting up and running a law firm it's managing those finances very different than setting up and running a women's clothing store.
I would say very much the concept of if the water's high, you don't see the rocks. And when we first started it, I was doing much better financially than at the end. And when there wasn't the money, to just pour into the business, you see the problems. When the water's lower, then you hit the rocks. And part of the reason I didn't is because I was focusing all my attention on trying to sell little black dresses, and so, you can have a lot of money in something and still have problems. You don't know it until you run out of money. Living in Chicago now, every time I see an open, a vacant 2,000 square foot retail space, I always wonder, would Colette have worked here? Would it? And it might. I mean, you've got to know your clientele, I guess. And I think in Lafayette, Indiana, there are people with money and there are women that are into fashion. Not a whole lot. I mean, not like not like in Chicago, but you got to, I guess, know who your customers are and what they're going to buy. And it caused some friction with my daughters. They liked this image of the store as a high end, selling Free People and BB Dakota and the high end. And I
listen to you, like just throwing out those designer. I mean, those are they're just like you're throwing them out. You're like rolling off the tip of your tongue.
Exactly. And before we had this store, I wouldn't have even known, but now I do. And my daughter certainly knew, and they enjoyed having a store kind of directed to those types of brands, the high end. Free People, as I tried to push it in a higher profit margin, lower cost direction that I thought would appeal to students, who with less money. That caused some friction in our family.
So that also seems to get to another point about where when there are two different visions, and those are two very different approaches to a business.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say whenever you walk by an empty store and you see that your heart just sinks of, I know what those people just what those poor people went through.
Hope springs eternal.
That's right. Look at you. So would you ever open another? Would you ever open up another like retail store or women's clothing store?
If one of my daughters came to me and wanted to do that, I would do that.
You would do it.
I wouldn't go try and run it myself, but I would try. I would try again, absolutely.
All right. I like that. Hope springs eternal.
Absolutely, it does.
Great. Cool. I admire Tony's loyalty to his family and desire to preserve his wife's memory. Why else would this patent attorney with a thriving law practice jump in feet first to run a women's clothing boutique? His story underscores the challenges in running a small business. To be successful, you need a singular vision, a face of the company who can connect with customers, and someone other than a guy's guy as the buyer for women's makeup, accessories, and that iconic little black dress. If you want more Not Suitable for Work or have a work story to share, be sure to follow us on Facebook at Not Suitable for Work. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. I'm Peter C. Diamond. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter C. Diamond. Not Suitable for Work is produced by Matt Cunningham at Truthful Enthusiasm. Get your story online with truthfulenthusiasm.com. Until next time.